Welcome back to this two-part series on working with forms. This is video 2, and in this one we're talking about quizzes. Let's go ahead and get started. There are two types of forms in Microsoft Forms. One is the type that we covered in the previous video. There I covered how you can add background images, use these different question types like stars, add logos, and do branching. If you want to really learn about those features, go back to the previous video because they will still be pertinent to quizzes. Let's first start by creating a new quiz. We are going to play the role of a home economics teacher that's teaching a course about baking. So we're going to say, here's a baking quiz. And then we can also say home economics in the subtitle. There we go. The next thing we're going to do is add a question. And we have a number of options here, but the one I want to choose is choice. When we create questions, we really want the student to be thinking about what it is that we're asking. So I'm going to ask a question that many might consider a bit of a trick question here, but if you're paying attention, you probably knew this already. In baking, what are considered wet ingredients? And here we can go water, sugar, add an option, flour, add one more option, and we'll type milk. Why might this be a trick question? If you're familiar with baking, then you know that in most recipes in baking, sugar is actually considered a wet ingredient. Now, let's take a look at the preview for this quiz. As you can see, right now the student can only choose one, but we certainly have more wet ingredients here than just one. So let's go back. What we can do is make this a multiple answer. And I don't know if you noticed over on the left-hand side here, they go from radio buttons, which are circles, to squares. Not too noticeable when you do it. But when you click on the preview button, you'll find that now you can answer with as many options as you want. The student must be required to answer this question, so we'll make that required. And then we'll add some points to it. Now, what you assign for points is completely up to you. You could add 100 points for this, or it could be 1 point. It doesn't really matter. A lot of teachers, a lot of educators might have it add up to 100, but that's your choice. I'm just going to make this worth 5 points. As a reminder, just like forms, anytime you make a change, they're automatically saved. So you can see saved up there. As we're typing, the form will just save. So I'm asking a new question down here, and I'm going to choose text. This is going to be a conversion question, so I'll type conversion. And now I'm going to do something unique with this quiz. I'm going to come here to the context menu, and I'm going to choose math. And in math, I can click on the conversion area, or math area rather, and you can see I have a calculator. I can choose this one here, x over something, the fraction, and choose 1, and then I'll type tab, 4, tab, cups, equals how many tablespoons, and click OK. Now, right now, the student can enter text here, but what we want to do is require them to only answer with a number. So I'll come over here to the context menu again and choose restrictions. And over here, I can choose number. There. Now the student can only type a number. For this one, I'm going to give this 10 points, just because it sounds good. And also, it is required. Let's take a look at the form. I can just go ahead and click outside of the question, and then when I scroll around, I can actually see the whole form. In this case, the whole quiz. Notice that it says 15 points up here. That's because question 1 is 5 points, and question 2 is 10 points. So you add those up, you get 15 points. At any point, you can also preview your quiz. So just click Preview at the top of the page, and then you can start answering questions however you like. And you can also test here to make sure that this is only accepting numbers. So if I were to start typing there are, oh, it looks like I have to enter a number. Whoop, and I'm getting this red text. So I can type, for example, 3.5 or 4, and that will enter just fine. I can also just press the Submit button, and this just lets me kind of see what the form will look like after I submit it. Let's click the Back button. Notice that when we came back to the form, we actually have a responses area here with a little 1 indicator. So I'm going to go to this Responses tab, and what you can see is it actually saved the question that I filled out, and I can see those responses here. Now, we're not done building this quiz, and we certainly don't want our sample responses in here. So what we can do is go here to the Options context menu and choose Delete All Responses. I'll go ahead and choose Delete, and there's no responses in our form yet. So we'll go back to the list of questions and do one more question. Before we add our last question, I want to point something out. We have this conversion question here that has a mathematical formula in it, and the answer can only be a number. I'm going to ask another question and make that text. Notice that it remembers the fact that we want to enter an equation, and the number is the only kind of answer that can be given. So if we don't want that restriction, there's a few things that we're going to do. We're going to come here to the context menu. We're going to remove the subtitle. We'll remove the restrictions. And we'll remove math. There. Now the person that's responding can just answer the question with plain text. Let's go ahead and ask the question. What kind of appliance is this? And we can just go ahead and upload an image. There. So we have our final question in place. The next thing that we're going to do is look at how we're going to track answers. Before we ask our students to take the test, one of the things that we'll want to do is set the answers. Now, you don't have to do any answers here. You could just go ahead and share this quiz, and then you could just grade each and every one of the students' answers manually. But why do that when you can let Microsoft Forms help you with it? So let's come over here to the first question. As we mouse over each one of these questions, you'll see these 3 icons on the right. Here we have a message that we can display, and then we also have this correct answer. So this question is, in baking, what are considered wet ingredients? Maybe I'm going to change this to what are typically. So you can change that anytime you'd like. And now I'm going to say water is a correct answer. And yes, sugar is usually considered a wet ingredient in baking, so that's a correct answer. Flour is not, and milk is. Let's take a look at the next question. Here we can see 1/4 cups equals how many tablespoons? So let's go ahead and add the correct answer. That's 4. Finally, we have what kind of an appliance is this? This is a text question. So I'm going to come down here to add answer, and I'm going to give the answer. Hand mixer. But, you know, at the end of the day, it might be a hand mixer, a hand blender, a blender. All those are good answers. So I'm going to press enter, and then I'll type hand blender. Mixer, blender. So all of those would be correct answers. So now that we've set up the answers, as the student responds, after the student responds, we'll know whether or not they chose the right answers. Before we share our quiz with our students, one of the things that we want to do is set up some options. So click the context menu at the top right-hand corner of the screen and choose Settings. Here you can see show results automatically. So if you do that, the student is going to see whether they answered the question properly. This is great for the student because they'll get the immediate feedback if they got the answer right. And this is usually good for a lot of adult learning sessions where maybe someone gets some homework because they're learning a new technology or something like that, and they just are taking the quiz. However, sometimes you might have students where you're concerned that they might share the results. So if you have this turned on, then the student is going to know, oh, I got all these answers right, and here are the things that were wrong, and they could conceivably share that with other people. So you might want to turn that off if that's a concern for you. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on for now, just so we can see what that user interface looks like. Then we can decide who can fill out the form. If we choose anyone with this link can respond, that means you can share the link with anyone, whether they're in your Office 365 plan or not. So this is basically anyone on the web with the URL link can respond. Or you can only force people in your Office 365 organization to respond. And you can also record the name of that person so you know who took the test. You probably also want to turn on one response per person. This way, the same person can't take the test multiple times. You also have some other options here. You can accept responses. That means that people can go to the quiz and take the quiz. You can also set a start and end date. So let's say that everyone needs to finish their quiz by the end of day Monday. You can go ahead and choose that here. And you can see those dates look like that. You can also shuffle the questions. So when you choose this options, you can actually shuffle the questions. So maybe this question in baking, what are typically considered wet ingredients? Maybe that's the second or the third question. It'll shuffle them around. So that's what you need to know for the settings. The next thing we're going to do is share this form with our students. Your students have no idea how to respond to this form, so you need to inform them some way. You click the share button at the top of the page. Here you can just copy this and send out an email, or you could get a QR code or an embed code for a website, or you can just click this email link and this will open up your default email client with this URL built into it. I'm just going to copy it. Just so you're aware, you have two other interesting sharing options. One is if you click here, you'll get a URL, and you can go to the browser, enter that URL, and then it will just create a duplicate of this form. Also, maybe you want to work with this form collaborating with some colleagues. Maybe there's some other home ec teachers that might have some feedback for you or might have some other questions. You can go ahead and click and get a link for that and share that with your colleagues. I'm just going to, again, copy the URL for now, and I'm going to open up a new tab in my browser and act as if I'm a student. Once your students click on the link, they'll be brought to the browser and they'll start filling out the form. Just so you know, there is no such thing as a Microsoft Forms app. You just open this right up in your browser, and it works on both your computer and any kind of a web-enabled device like a iPhone, iPad, Android device, or what have you. So as a student goes, you can see they can see how many points each one of the questions is worth. I'm going to purposely make some mistakes here. I'm going to choose water and milk. Remember, sugar is also typically considered a wet ingredient in baking. I skipped over that. Now, this one says conversion. Is 1/4 cups equal to how many tablespoons? Well, I'm going to say 4, and then I'm going to say that this is a mixer, and click Submit. Now remember earlier, I actually turned on the feature so the student can see what their answers would look like after they finish the form. So you can see here it says, no, you are not correct here. It's sugar should have been selected as well. So you can see that checkbox there. Here you can see I got this one right for 4, and I got the mixer right. Let's head back to the responses in our quiz. Every time someone responds, you'll get an immediate response up here in the tab. And let's go ahead and look. We have one response with an average score of 20, and the quiz is still active, meaning we didn't set an end date yet, so it's still active. People can still respond. And now over here, we have a number of questions, and we can see who didn't answer what. So, for example, the proper answers were water, milk, and sugar. No one's answered sugar. If I click the details link over here on the right, then I can see who that was. As a matter of fact, each one of the answers has a little details link. And then as I come down here, you remember I actually created a question that has 4 possible answers. The respondent could respond with any of these answers. And right now, Mixer is the only one that's been used. Let's scroll back to the top. Now you can see that there's an Open in Excel option. I actually already downloaded that to my computer, and you can see what that looks like. Basically, we have a start time and a completion time, so now we know how long it took the student to take the test, the total points, and all that other good stuff. So basically, we have all of the answers compiled into an Excel spreadsheet. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at this Review Answers option here. Now, what we could do, if we want, is change the student's grade. Now, let's say the student came back to us and said, you know what? I know what it says. It says in baking, what are typically considered wet ingredients? That was too much of a trick question. I really don't think you even taught us that. Hey, can we get a can I get a grade? So you can see it says auto graded here, but I can go ahead and give the student the 5 points if I want to. And then I could even make a comment, adjusted because the student was correct. I did not teach this, or something along those lines. As we come down here, you can see we have this, what kind of appliance is this? And the student entered mixer. But really, I wanted them to recognize that this is a hand mixer. So I could go over here and just say, sorry, you're only getting 8 points for this. And say, hand mixer would have been a better answer. Finally, up here, the student got the conversion of 1/4 cups is 4 tablespoons. And maybe we really think that that student went above and beyond remembering that one. So we could even make it 12 points, and you can see it says extra credit. Okay, good. So as you're doing this, remember it's all savings, so we don't need to save anything there. And also, I want to point out at the top, we're just responding for one person. And you can see up here it says the time to complete. So we know that it only took that student 1 minute and 24 seconds to complete, and they're getting 23 out of 25 points. If we want to make some comments here on the quiz itself, we can do that. Great job. And there, we can move on. Down here, there's a little context menu with some options. You can print this response if you'd like. And once again, the student can see everything that you typed here. You can see that adjusted this because the student was correct. I didn't teach this. And they can see the great job at the top. The other thing that you can do is come here to options, and you can post the score. Now, when you post the score, this is when the people that responded to the quiz will actually see the response. Now, I'm going to go ahead and post, but I'm going to remind you why that post is important. Let's go back here for a moment to our question. If you recall, when we went here to the settings, we said show results automatically. Well, if we didn't show the results automatically, then the student would never know that they answered the questions right. Also, when we changed the grades, the student wouldn't know that the grade has been changed. So we have two reasons for why we want to post the score. One is because the student needs to see their final score, and two, if you have this turned off, students will never actually see the results unless you post the result. Okay, so what does that mean? What does this posting the result mean? What that does is when you post the scores, it'll actually go ahead and allow the student to go back to their URL to see it. So I'm just going to click preview here, and this is what the student will come back and see. Okay, so with all the comments, hand mixer would have been a better answer. All the comments, 8 out of 10 points, will all be inside of this. And so now the student can see their results. By the way, this is what the mobile view looks like. So they'll be able to see that on their computer or on their device. So that's it. This is how you set up quizzes in Microsoft Forms. I hope you found this to be useful. Well, thank you for watching this free video on YouTube. If you like it, I would really appreciate it if you press that subscribe button and the like button. It's incredibly helpful and it keeps the content free. Thanks, and I'll catch you in another video.